things should you value in a person and in yourself when dating? How does your parents' relationship affect your dating ideas? Is it important to figure yourself out before you can commit to another person?
Okay, so I have three questions today that are all concerning dating, and I know that's something I've definitely considered for myself at several points in my young adult life. Now, while I've not been in a serious relationship myself as of yet, and may not be speaking from my own mistakes and successes in a relationship, I've observed many relationships, some successful and some not, and being able to watch and learn from these many circumstances has taught me so much and given me some very firm foundations in my own views on dating that I'm really looking forward to sharing today. So the first question asks what things you should value in yourself and in another person while you're dating. I know that some things can vary person to person depending on what they value on a smaller scale. But I think some really important ones that I have seen in successful relationships and hold for myself too are religion and respect and honesty. Religion is so important to value in a relationship, especially for Christians. The Bible says that you should not be unequally yoked, and that doesn't just mean that you're both like quote unquote Christians. It also means you should both hold God in the same regard. A relationship just can't function as it was meant to when one has God as the forefront of their life and the other is more of a lukewarm Christian. Being on common ground in that regard is essential. Respect is in a relationship is essential, and it also has to be a priority. The two people involved both have to have like values that they hold for themselves and respect those of the other person, and it takes both great love and great respect to uphold all boundaries and values put into place by a couple. Respect proves not only your love for someone, but also that you trust them and consider their values important and valid. Finally, honesty is so important. The most beautiful relationships I have seen have been built on honesty policies, and I have seen other relationships absolutely crumble because the two were not fully honest with each other. When looking for the person that you're going to marry, you can't expect that you won't have to be honest with them about yourself, your feelings, and your beliefs, and you wouldn't want them to hide that from you either. Now, the next question is, how do my parents' relationship affect my dating ideas? So, my parents have the kind of relationship I search for in life. They love each other and trust each other and know each other more deeply than any other person on the earth. Often, my mom knows my dad better than he knows himself, and vice versa. Their relationship really is also that opposite attracts kind of nature, and that's something that I really admire. The way that works, though, is that they each have a deep understanding of who they are individually with strengths and weaknesses, and they know each other's strengths and weaknesses. They understand each other's flaws and accept them and help each other to grow in that. For instance, my very right-brained mother is constantly going, and she'll sometimes forget things or leave a mess behind her. And my dad is extremely left-brained, so it drives him nuts when things aren't in their place. I've watched my dad's expression before as he's walked into an explosion of a project in a room, and while his brain is screaming, "Oh my gosh, what is happening in this mess?" he kind of smiles at it now. It's because he's really come to appreciate that the mess is a sign of her creative work, and he's come to really love that. And my mom can also be driven crazy by the way that my dad doesn't do spontaneous things or travel when she loves to do that. But she gently nudges him out of his comfort zone and plans things ahead on purpose so that he doesn't get stressed out as much as he used to. The way that they care for each other is really admirable. And seeing how my mom loves my dad and cares about him so much really sets a beautiful example of the way I am to love my husband one day, wholeheartedly and trustingly and lovingly. It gives me a biblical mindset on who I am to be in the relationship as the woman. Now, my dad, he shows me what to look for in a young man. He's shown me by his own actions and in who he is, both what is important to me specifically and what is important across the board for any girl looking for a godly, lifelong relationship. Above all else, the young man must be driven and directed by God. Absolutely. He ought to be loyal and and honest and love deeply and biblically. My father is all of those things, and watching how he cares for my mother demonstrates the complete beauty of how God intended marriage to be and how I want my own to be. Now, the last question is it important to figure yourself out before you can commit to another person? Okay, so figuring yourself out before getting into a relationship, I think that it's difficult really to completely have oneself figured out. But I think that in this regard, we're talking about knowing yourself well, your likes, your dislikes, your flaws and strengths and hopes and dreams. And that definitely is something that needs to start happening before committing to a relationship. It's something to really know before dating someone. And another thing you really, really, really need to know is your values. You have to know those. What is most important to you in life? What drives you? What virtues are most important to have in a partner? And what kind of a life would be worth living to you? All those things are things you will need to communicate to the person you date and that you need to know for yourself. I've noticed how people who aren't secure in themselves and their values get into relationships and completely lose themselves. They morph into a version of the person that they're dating. And that relationship, if it doesn't work out, they have no idea who they are in the wake of it because their identity had become the person that they were dating. It's really, really difficult thing to get out of. And in addition to that, I think honestly the most important thing to figure out within yourself before beginning a relationship with another person is your relationship with God. Personally, as a young lady, I've always told myself that I will be ready for a relationship when I'm not seeking one. When my relationship with God is so strong, I don't feel like I have to have a relationship to feel complete. And that's my value. If I were to begin a relationship before I was leaning into God to that extent, naturally my partner would become an idol in life and that relationship would crumble. And that relates back to the value thing. Knowing God and knowing your values clearly are things that must be set into place before considering a relationship. And yeah, I think that's all I've got.
I think one of the biggest things you should value in a person and yourself when dating is integrity. You need to be someone who's honest and fulfills the commitments that you say you're going to do. And one thing I like to tell my children are faith, family, and funds. So you need to have that conversation early when you're dating is faith. What is your faith? And do you have the same faith? And are you headed in the same direction? Knowing that everyone's at a different place in their sanctification and understanding of God, but you should at least be faced in the same direction and going the same way. Family, how do they treat their family? Because how they're treating their family is really good indicator in how they're going to treat you later on. And then funds, are they good stewards of the funds that they have been given? That is a very important question, especially because in our house, when we're thinking about dating, it's really a commitment towards marriage eventually. And as far as wondering if you should figure yourself out and discover who you are and who God created you to be before you marry or commit to another person, I do believe that that's very important. I don't think that you're going to figure your entire self out, but I do believe it's important for you to be aware of who you are, how you were made, and how you communicate. So, with us having the disc assessment here at Under His Wings, it gives the girls an understanding of maybe how and ways that they communicate, and then the ways that other people communicate. So, that's a form of being self aware. But you should be on that road of knowing who you are, knowing your values, so that it's something that you can bring to the table.